Hej och hjärtligt välkomna ska ni vara till Investor Target Invest Live special. Idag ska vi presentera 3 kanadensiska bolag som alla står i färd med att ta nästa steg i sin utveckling. En utveckling som om framgångsrik kraftigt kommer att minska risken i bolaget och då sannolikt öka börsvärdet. Eftersom dagens bolag är engelskspråkiga så kommer presentationen nu att fortsätta på engelska. Hello, welcome, and if you tune in to Invest Live from Canada, a good morning, and if you're from the West Coast, a very early and a very good morning to you. As always, if you watch this live, you can interact with the management by asking questions, and you will do that in the top chat that you can see on your side. We will deal with all the questions at the end of each presentations. Invest Live Special is a cooperation between Direct Studios, Investor Target, Stock Picker, and the presenting companies, and those are today brought to you by Scandinavian Alliance. Scandinavian Alliance is a full-service company expert, and as such can connect any company to the Scandinavian Northern European markets and its financing. For more information, please go to scandinavianalliance.com. So, with all the disclaimers under our belt, it's an absolute pleasure to introduce our first company. And the first company is Earthworks Industries and its CEO, David Atkinson. Hello, David. Can you hear me?
Carlo, I can hear you fine.
Excellent. So, how are things in Vancouver?
Well, it's the usual weather. We have had a little bit of snow, which is unusual for our part of the world, but other than that, pretty normal.
All right. So similar to the Stockholm weather here, where we more or less lost all the snow overnight, but we're sure to get it back soon. Anyway, David, please walk us through your presentation and tell us how you, by creating value for your shareholder, also will create value for the communities or the community where you operate and the planet. So with that, David, it's all yours.
Thank you, Carlo, and I'd like to welcome everyone and taking time to share in the presentation. I thought I would give you just a little bit of a background on how we got to this point, a little background on myself. I've been involved in the environmental field and quite a bit with the First Nations in North America. And the company originally was involved in dealing with contaminated soils, looking for technologies for the cleanup of inner cities. Back primarily, we started out looking at technologies for the expo lands here in Vancouver, and that led us to conferences all over the country. And when I was in Pittsburgh one year, I was approached by a consul from the Canadian consulate in Washington who invited the company to come and listen to some of the larger contractors and the environmental people in Washington. And it was very interesting because that's what led us to where we are today. And that was that we were a company looking at new technologies that were very expensive for a junior and a younger company. And the fact that the larger firms were the people that we should be looking at and talking to about the technologies we were working on at the time. And one of the presentations that was made was talked about where you would locate these types of facilities and these treatment and processes in the future. And what came up at that time was the availability of where would you site a location for processing, material handling in the future. And it came up that the tribal lands in the U.S. were very extremely attractive since they are not subject to county or state jurisdiction. And we were already involved at that point in time in some run-of-river power developments and projects back at that time with some of the First Nations in Vancouver in British Columbia. And that was a really good window into the opportunities of getting involved in the environment and the opportunity of where these types of operations could potentially be sited. And that's when we started looking for a location, and we found Cortina. And we specifically focused on California because we thought if we were going to move forward at the time with a development like this, we wanted to make sure we were in a jurisdiction with the highest standards for the environment for moving forward and the modeling of this. And we found Cortina was an ideal location just outside of San Francisco, and primarily went after the land use was more the challenge that we had. Other than looking for technologies, our strategy was to site the location, get it permitted, and then start looking at the technologies that we feel are going to be the most appropriate for moving forward. And that leads us to Cortina. And I'm going to just jump ahead on the slide here now. We're a Canadian company. We have a U.S. subsidiary called Cortina Integrated Waste Management, and it's ran by some very, very well-respected individuals that have been involved in the business for quite some time. They have good relationships with the companies down south. And one of the things that we did in working with the agencies was we wanted to make sure that we set the standards as high as possible when we were citing Cortina. The lease that we entered into made sure that we considered anything that a major source would be looking for processing, that a major city would be looking for as far as landfilling, material recovery, disposal operations such as compost operations and contaminated soils. And that was our priority there. And what we looked at for the most part was what kind of what the region was really involved in and what would serve them. And that is one of the other things that was very important to us, to make sure that it was specifically focused on the region, that it was in a good location, and really not anywhere that would have any kind of significant impact on the people around it or the environment. It's an industry that early on I used a lot of times. I would compare it to the mining industry because it's very similar in that, what we're looking at is instead of taking material out of the ground, we would be potentially putting it back in the ground. And it's a very similar process to the permitting process, the environmental impacts that you're dealing with, and just demonstrating that you can build it, you can properly bring it online and meet all the codes and regulations that could be potentially required. And it's funny because the resource that we're dealing with is almost coming back into focus because it is so much in demand right now that we start addressing, our own waste issues and things. And it's stuff that we are very, very, very focused on. And the difference between a mining company that's going out looking for a resource and trying to discover it and prove it and bring it online, the resource that we are dealing with is out there and in huge supply, and the ability to find the resources, it's there and available to us. And it has continued to grow in the last few years simply because other countries have started to just not accept a lot of the materials that were being exported and shipped out, and now we're being forced to have to deal with these materials and find technologies, and that's what we're looking at here. The landfill at Cortina is one of the processes that we permitted through the lease at Cortina, including the material recovery, as I mentioned, and other operations that are permitted through the lease. But the landfill at Cortina will be the first one brought online in over 20 years in California. And landfills are a little different now in that going forward, we're trying to eliminate a lot of the organic materials that go in that create the methanes and gases. And it's more moving forward, what we refer to as a material storage cell is what they'll be deemed as, because while we're going to be trying to make sure that absolutely the bare minimum of material that we bring in goes into the landfill, because it's our gold in the ground. It's continually increases in value. The disposal, we want to conserve it as much as possible. And anything that we can recycle and repurpose and turn around and sell is additional revenues in our pockets. And as you can see, a lot of the landfills are going to be closing in the next few years. And model at Cortina is very, very precedent setting. The California, while everyone likes to believe they're one of the most environmentally sensitive companies and counties or states in the country, they actually have one of the highest waste creations in the country. And that's the problem that we continue to see surfacing, is that there is just such an incredible demand for disposal, and it's only increasing now as the population grows, and that the recycling that is now being forced back into the country that needs to be addressed. And that's part of what we are looking at our model at Cortina is now that we have the site and the lease permitted, and we have the different operations that we wanted to see in place. We are now looking at almost the analogy I like to use as a shopping mall. Now we want to bring in the technologies that we feel are the highest standards available, and that's who we will be looking to partner with and bring in at Cortina. As I mentioned, Cortina is in a very, very good location in proximity to San Francisco. We have a very significant area and property. The disposal at Cortina would be probably deemed as a medium-sized operation, and it's very, very. What we did in the permitting at Cortina, we took either the standards for Cortina were based on either the state of California, federal, or whatever the highest standards were. And that's what we made sure we did at Cortina. We wanted to make sure that the standard here is the highest anywhere and is precedent setting, once again, as far as all aspects go. The actual disposal area at Cortina is approximately 200 acres. The disposal capacity would be somewhere close to 10 million tons, which on its own is a significant asset to us. But as I said earlier, that's an asset that we want to conserve. And the analogy again with the mining company, we want to be preserving that high grade asset as much as possible, because it only continues to increase in value as we move forward. The current lease is till 2032, and we have an option to extend it to 2057. A process at Cortina, once we identified the location and our choice of the Quetzaldehi Nation, we have been working with a lot of the federal agencies on this whole process. The guidance that has been developed has been not only based on the state of California codes and regulations, but all of the processes that we've gone through and the waivers and design components and regulations have all gone through the Region 9 of the federal EPA in California, but they have also been vetted through Washington, D.C. as well, and the other regions. So Cortina has an application and the potential to be copied everywhere in the United States. And that is something that is very, very significant for us moving forward. And it also creates a tremendous opportunity for other First Nations and tribes in the country to look at doing this as well moving forward. If they look to have the proper demographic, as we've identified, and they do have the land, which is key, it would be available to others. And that's something that we feel is very important moving forward in the model for Earthworks moving forward. We also look at the making sure that as I said, the demographic of the location is very important. Cortina is in a very, very good location. It's just off Interstate 5, which is a major highway running down into the Bay Area. It's at the intersection of California Highway 20, which runs out to the coast. And it's really an ideal location for us. It's going to create an incredible amount of jobs in the area. It will also enrich the local tribe and the community with direct benefits of job creation. And it'll also showcase the community as a leader in the waste industry in waste management and processing. And as we like to call it, moving forward, it'll be more of a material management process moving forward as opposed to waste disposal. And we will be working with the local agencies as far as making sure we coordinate with the environmental charities in the areas. We want to make sure that we're in tune with everyone involved around us and anyone who's impacted with this, and that lends back to our bridging differences in sustainability. We know that everyone in the area needs to be considered as far as these types of developments moving forward. Our management and board of directors is more than capable of handling anything to do with this type of a development. As I mentioned earlier, Mr. Andrews was involved in the run-of-river here in British Columbia in the early 2000s and some of the first run-of-river projects. Mr. Waraniak ran farming operations in Canada, moved out to the West Coast and developed one of the highest standards of agricultural operations, organic operations. So our familiarity with compost operations and enhancement for fertilizers and things along those lines is second to none. Our financial operations are handled by Mr. Russell, and more importantly, Mr. Powell, who is the individual that runs the show down south and is very, very well connected to all the waste operations and has brought on these types of operations in the past, permitted, and will be key in the day-to-day operations and in moving forward with everything to do with Cortina and our operations down there. And as I said earlier, my background is really environmental, and working in this type of environment under this type of a development and the tribal relationships in California and the United States and Canada. This particular tile I enjoy because it really gives everyone a sense of the whole flow on the waste that's involved from start to the process. And one of the things that I want to point out, as I mentioned, in this, our operation essentially starts at the transfer and the recycling station. And we designed Cortina initially in two areas. We have a disposal cell right at the gate and the entrance to the site, which would allow us to create revenues immediately for material that's already been sorted, separated, and is ready for disposal. And that's something that we felt was important because it allows us to get to generation of revenues immediately. And on the longer term, we would be developing our second cell, L2 and 3. Cell 1 is approximately 1 million tons of disposal capacity, and the second cell is approximately 8.5 million tons of disposal capacity. The transfer station and recycling station would come online simultaneously to these operations, and then the additional operations, the composting, material separation and storage, and other soil amendments. These are the operations that we will be looking to other companies that we feel are the best in the business at this juncture in time, and will be partnering with those firms moving forward. As I said, the strategy at Cortina was the land use and the permitting for the types of operations, and that was the key there. I like to point out this particular tile because the landfills are something that need to be understood. I think it's the older misconception about landfills and throwing things in the ground and not being properly maintained. Landfills in the future are going to be, as I said earlier, specifically secure storage cells. In other words, any material that we cannot recycle, repurpose, and resell will have a home for it, and it will be stored in a safe, secure facility for future processing when we find a technology that has come down or comes along that we can then remove this material and recycle it and reuse it and repurpose it. And I just wanted to make sure that people see that, because it's really important to understand, the detail, and they are state of the art, these types of operation. As I talked about earlier, we've designed Cortina to bring in material for disposal immediately, which creates revenue right out of the gate for us and is a significant revenue stream for us. And all the other operations, the compost operations will be simultaneous to the landfill operations, and the organic waste treatments, material recovery, and all these other additional operations will come online as the operation expands. And there is considerable other revenues that will come as a result of these operations outside of just the disposal operations that we have from the landfill operation. At this point in time, we spent a considerable amount of time going through the environmental aspect of Cortina. As I said, mining is very similar. At Cortina, we were very similar to a company that went in, did the exploration to discover if we had something. We have now proven we have that asset, and that we then went through the process of making sure that we could meet all the environmental elements and components. And then once the lease was approved in 2007, we've gone through all of the additional regulatory processes, and we are at a point now where we've spent approximately $25 million US, and our capex to cell one construction is approximately 30 million, which is very, very reasonable. And with the final design components expected shortly, we should be in operation within 24 months in calendar year 2026. We have a strong market growth and a very experienced management team, and we feel there's an incredible opportunity at this point in time to get involved at Cortina with Earthworks and Cortina. And it's really almost a re-emergence of an industry that I think we are seeing right now. While it may be considered somewhat low-tech, the new technologies that are coming in that are now allowing us to process and recycle materials is really starting to become a dominant new industry. And the siting of these facilities is very key, and having identified where you could site this type of an operation and the land available, and that's the real challenge that we went through and that we identified and are the first through, and are very excited about this opportunity going forward. And as I mentioned earlier, the development will comply with either federal, tribal, and state regulations, whichever were higher, making us essentially the highest standards anywhere for this type of an operation. Our structure is very, very reasonable. The company has tried to limit dilution throughout the process, through all the financial collapses and COVIDs, and we're in a very strong position right now, very reasonable capitalization for the amount of time and money invested, and our insider position ownership is very significant, and we continue to look at a very, very strong position moving forward as we roll the company out. That is essentially everything I have for you at this point in time, and I would like to invite any questions and hand it over to Carlo to take it from here.
Well,
thanks everyone.
Well, thank you, David. Very interesting, and you gave the expression landfill a completely new meaning, which I think was invigorating. You refer to changes in the recycling regulation. Could you just explain to us here in Sweden what that would mean? And do you have a time frame? Because you're also referring to the regulations as connected to your cash flow situation on one slide.
Well, it's actually right. It's right now that I'm talking about the industry already has started to address the technologies for processing and treating a lot of the materials. But what really drove this was over the last probably 5 or 10 years, a lot of the offshore countries started not refusing, but a lot of the countries no longer take a lot of the recycled materials as far as plastics and materials that we were shipping over elsewhere. And that has pushed back the demand to bring technologies. And now the recycling regulations on what you need to be sorting and separating have started to increase. And those are things that are coming in. Those are regulations that are starting to be more enforced, and things and removal of food waste and things along those lines that need to be addressed are all happening right now as we speak, Carlo. And that's why we're looking just now at the companies that we know are at the leading edge of those technologies.
And you had 2 slides which were quite interesting, and that was one where you had the federal approval, and also one where you showed the landfills, and you elaborated around that as not an ordinary landfill. Are you unique in your area here with federal approval and cooperations and the technology?
Well, as I said earlier, one of the reasons for the land that the tribal lands are come under federal regulations. They're not subject to state and county. So all of the regulations that we've adopted and incorporated and married are either federal. We either incorporated state regs if they were higher, California codes and regulations, or federal regulations, whichever were higher. And we married these to tribal laws and regulations. That is what is unique to what we have done. These are one of a kind at this point in time and precedent setting for moving forward and giving the opportunity for other tribes to be able to do this moving forward. The lease was approved based on operations that we felt were necessary and that all the major waste companies would be offering, or what a city would be looking for or demanding to have available to them. And that's what we went after at Cortina.
So could I just expose my ignorance here then and just say, so whom would you compete with in that respect? I mean, you have federal approval, you have, state approval, and you have a cooperation or understanding among the local tribes, and you have the technology. So who are you up against?
I wouldn't just to make sure we're accurate on. We don't have. There's not state approval isn't required. We just either, if the state of California's codes and regulations are essentially the highest in the world or anywhere, and that's why we either adopted their codes and regulations at Cortina or federal regulations. Competition-wise, we are looking at the regions and the areas that I've identified are growing areas. The West Sacramento Valley is a very, very growing region, and it alone has material that potentially could make the economics for us work. But more importantly, we're still in very, very close proximity to the major Bay Area, and the demand for disposal is such that we will be very attractive to the local haulers and the disposal companies as well, not to mention, in all likelihood, very attractive as a potential target for a takeover by one of the major companies.
And there you just answered one of the other questions, because if you look at the shareholder ownership, you have 20%, so all the knowledge and experience here are on 20% hands. So you would be an interesting fit for anyone I take for a takeover.
Well, and we are, that's, I don't think, as I said, it's not, what we're looking at is that the industry is coming back into such demand. And we know the larger companies have a lot longer term opinion of where where the world's going, and are continually looking to make sure that they have the ability to grow and continue to move forward. And right now their focus is, I'm sure, on their existing operations, but a lot of the big cities are already starting to come into times where their disposal capacities are coming to their limits, and there's going to be people looking for other opportunities in other locations for future siting, and I think we're very attractive when it comes to that.
And if I recall one of your slides here, landfill waste has grown by 5% annually, whereas the number of new areas for landfills have been nil in the areas since 2001. So obviously there must be an extremely, well, let's say, pent-up demand. Is that the way to look at it?
And that's precisely, Carlo, what I was pointing out is that it's starting to really grow, and it's starting to, for lack of a better analogy, pile up. And the demands for the disposal, as I said, that's the last resort, but we just want to make sure that we have a safe storage facility for anything that has to, but we're going to preserve it, and we want to be doing everything possible to repurpose, recycle, and reuse, because the revenues involved in that for us, double our revenues. So that's what we are looking to do.
So that sounds very promising for the future here. But if we look at the coming year, what kind of news flow would you like the market to look at from Earthworks?
Well, I think that there's final designs, there's the operations moving forward, there's construction timelines, and I really think that there's going to be considerable interest in Cortina on the short term, as I mentioned, from other interests. And I think the opportunity for us to look at opportunities in other locations is going to be very, very significant. As we found in the earlier days with the power and the run of river, once the first operations got up and running, we found that the tribes and First Nations came to the industry, and we're seeing that right now. We're already seeing expression, people very, very interested in what we have done at Cortina and what we've done overall, and the opportunity for moving forward. So I think it's going to be a very exciting time, and for Earthworks moving forward, not only in the short term but in the long term as well.
And in the coming time here, we can look forward to, let's say, press releases or information from you regarding.
Oh yes, there will be a.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt, Carlo. Yes, there will be a flow constantly, very shortly.
Yeah, because I was also referring to one slide where you were building incremental revenue through other operations, which I think is mouth-watering, really, with the compost, organic waste treatment, material recovery, and on-site production. So it could be a very, very hectic year for you news-wise. Is that the way to look at it?
Yes, well, the timeline once the landfill is established here, which we're hoping by the spring construction season, that the compost operations, organics, all those types of operations can start simultaneous to that. But immediately, the disposal and getting revenues through the door is our priority at this point in time. And the material recovery operations, as we become an option available, we're in a very, very good location, as I mentioned, and we will become a very viable operation for haulers that are going up and down that I-5 corridor to the Bay Area and just looking at us as an alternative on the short term due to the traffic constraints on Interstate 80 between Sacramento and San Francisco is always an issue. So it should be a very exciting time for us.
Well, David, thank you for that. Extremely interesting, rather unique, I would say. And we should watch this space. So, David, the best of luck and thank you so much.
Thank you, Carlo.
And we will say thank you to you. And we will now take a short break while we connect to our next speaker, which will be Kent Sear from Pacific Booker Minerals. So, see you in a short while. Hej och välkomna igen, och vi ber om ursäkt om den här förseningen. Vi har haft ett litet tekniskt problem, men å andra sidan, vi sänder ju från ena änden av Kanada hit, så att det är ju inte så konstigt. Our next company, Pacific Booker Minerals, is presented today by Kent Zer, an independent consultant to the company. And as I understand it from the presentation, it is really ready to take the next step. So Kent, welcome. And please walk us through the presentation.
The presentation will go quite quickly, I believe. As you can see, there are only 5 parts to it. Pacific Booker is a Canadian junior mining company listed on the Toronto Venture Stock Exchange and also available for OTC trading in the States. There are fewer than 20 million shares outstanding. The company's main asset is referred to as the Morrison Project. The Morrison Project is a surface mineable copper, gold, and molybdenum ore deposit located in north-central British Columbia, Canada. Pacific Booker acquired the Morrison Project from Noranda Mines in the 1990s. There was 2 other mines operating in the area. Grand Isle Copper was one, and another one on Bell Mine, both on islands in Lake Babine. The Morrison Project is located on the shores of Morrison Lake, which is tributary to Lake Babine, just northeast of the mines named above. Due to a change in regulation with the formation of the Canadian National Standards for reporting of mining resources, the entire property was re-drilled and assayed again. In other words, it has been drilled completely twice. The second drilling was with the larger BQ core required by the new regulations. And new assays were done because the core is now split for assaying, and half the core remains in archives for future checking. So this was completed by 2005. Agreements were negotiated and implemented with the local indigenous peoples, especially the Lake Babine Nation. And of course, in the early days, this amounted to support for the camp, support for the drillers, transportation of materials and equipment back and forth to the site and so on. But they were hired preferentially as per the agreements and given preferential treatment. Mining and process plant engineering was completed, leading to a published NI 43-101 assessment. NI 43 is the national instrument defined by the regulations of 43-101 of the Government of Canada, respecting the qualifications and the competency of the people doing the resource estimate. A valid mine site design was done, including processing plant, and all of the necessary infrastructure. A supporting intent was for an environmental certificate, which was the first step from the British Columbia Environmental Assessment Office, the EAO. Pacific Booker was informed by the EAO officials that all requirements for Indigenous consultation were satisfied, and the certificate was recommended for approval by the minister. This was in 2009. The certificate was finally denied by the minister in 2012. Pacific Booker took the government to court in 2013, and the judge clearly decided in favor of Pacific Booker. For the next 9 years, except to request additional, never specified information, the EAO had the application back in their hands, and in 2022 again rejected the application. commenting that a new plan could be submitted. The EAO added further information to the effect that without the agreement and active support of the Lake Babine Nation, no certificate would be considered or issued. Since 2022, Pacific Booker has been focused on re-engaging with the Lake Babine Nation in the firm belief that the Morrison Project can be designed, built, and operated to closure with no significant risks to the environment or the salmon fishery. The Morrison Project offers significant long-term benefits to the Lake Babine Nation and other residents in the Lake Babine area. Just some current information. Pacific Booker is solvent and in good standing with the exchanges. Pacific Booker has maintained the mineral claims for the Morrison Project in good standing, and all current fees are paid in full. Time has increased the value of the metals held in the deposit. You can appreciate that from 2009 there has been some change in the price of copper and gold. And therefore this has increased the tonnage of ore available for mining at a profit. By definition, ore is what can be mined at a profit, and lower grade in the deposit all along is now profitable. Repeated efforts to engage with the Lake Babine Nation have not yet met with success. And I can tell you that those efforts are ongoing today, tomorrow, next week. At the spring directors meeting for Pacific Booker, 2 action plan steps were discussed and agreed for implementation by management. First, assiduously attempt to resume direct communication with the Lake Babine Nation. These attempts were to be done using a number of approaches, ranging from direct approaches to the chief and council, email letters, for example, to open letters in the local newspapers, and finally, personal contact by some shareholders. Now, in fact, we do have shareholders who are Lake Babine Nation members, but needless to say, there are politics at play even within the Lake Babine Nation. The second step was that failing satisfactory engagement, legal recourse on the grounds of bad faith, basically secretly repudiating the previous agreements, would be sought. In other words, the government was not lying when they said that we had completed all necessary steps for Indigenous consultation. Those agreements were documented. Those agreements were signed by chief and band councils in a number of cases. And the opposition comes from the unelected elders of the tribe, as we understand it today, and was expressed to the government privately, but not publicly, after they should have been issuing the certificate originally. So, continuing with the action plan, implementation of the plan has progressed to the penultimate letter to the chief having been sent. Period of waiting for a favorable or indeed any response will expire soon. Conclusion. At the present time, Pacific Booker is a speculative investment opportunity. What is clearly not speculation is the fact that there is a substantial tonnage of copper and gold ore available for mining in the Morrison Project. Not a large mine, but there is somewhere between 20 and 30 years of production there at a very nice rate, does not require major infrastructure investment, does not require major capital investment beyond the initial. And so the mine is still very attractive. And that's the conclusion of my presentation. A speculative investment with no speculation involved in the ore body.
Well, thank you for that, Kent. But I mean, to summarize it here, and particularly to the Swedish audience here, I mean, it is speculative in as much as it's a question of getting more or less the permission to start or continue to develop the mine. But I mean, as you stated, the value of the underlying assets has increased significantly, and I just pick a number here from 2005. Copper went from $149 to $376, and gold from $436 to today's $2,000 per ounce. So my first question, and obviously you may not be able to fully answer this, but why wouldn't anyone connected to the Morrison Project benefit significant on this one? And I'm referring to the ones stalling this one. What is the genius behind, let's say, the stalling here?
Some of it appears to be, and this is not direct evidence. You must understand this is based on conversations other people have had with people who claim to know. It just appears to be that perhaps 30 years ago, 40 years ago, Miranda mines may have really upset some people in the area. That's one possibility. The other possibility is that in spite of the fact that the area under consideration for the mining operation is quite remote and very much unused typically by more than a few members of the tribe, they want no change. So it's kind of a NIMBY situation, not in my backyard. It's not a case of the Morrison mine in particular, it's the case of any mining, don't want it. And that is obviously a challenge to the elected officials of the tribe, because they're charged with providing incomes and employment to as many of their people as they can. And so there is a split within the tribe. Unfortunately, that split generally is resolved by people moving away from the area. So now when the Lake Babine Nation actually has a nation meeting, they have to have a meeting in Vancouver, they have to have a meeting in Prince George, they have to have a meeting in Burns Lake, because they don't all live in one place, and the people that had education and ambition got out. So it is a challenge. We are dealing with what appears to be some older people within the tribe who, for whatever reason, are against mining.
Yeah, so this is well, let's say this is an example of Canada being one of the most mining-friendly countries, because you need to get everyone on board. But should you get the permission to mine, or you get everyone on board, what kind of time frames are we looking at here? Will something happen during the next coming 6 months, or do we hold our breath to 12 months, or what would be your estimate?
Within the next 6 months, for sure, definite action will be taken in one direction or the other. So we will either be going ahead with the project, or we will be looking at our legal alternatives.
Oh, okay. And then if you go into the legal alternatives, it's another 12 months, or what can one look for here?
Then it becomes timing out of our hands, essentially. But probably 12 to 24 months to get it into court. We don't seem to be doing very well with that since COVID.
But that's slightly out of your hands, I take it. But during that period, I mean, you have a solid balance sheet. You have assets in the ground, and the price is not moving against you, one could argue. So it could be worth waiting for.
It definitely could be worth waiting for. Obviously, court cases are not a guarantee ever, but there is something of a forward bet in that case if you wanted to make it as a speculative investment.
Well, thank you for that.
The much preferred answer is that we actually make reasonable contact in the next few months, and we actually make progress with the Lake Bebby Nation. Again, that's speculation, but in that direction, the outcome is far more certain.
Well, it sounds like a very logical solution if you look at it out of, let's say, an environmental and an economic perspective. Where should one turn to if one wants more information on this, in this matter, in particular, or more on the company? Shall one go to the website or the homepage of the company, or can you point us in any other way?
There is quite a vast amount of information on the company's website.
Yeah.
It is, I shall say, not in very modern format. Most of it has been there for 20 years, but it is very complete as well. So feel free to look up the information there. The financial records are far more current, and of course they are filed with the various listing bodies. So that information is available as well. If there's any particular question, then address that to the Pacific Booker information email address that's available on the website, and otherwise get in touch with me or whatever, however you want to do this.
Excellent.
We're open. I can tell you that the outstanding shares are quite closely held. A small number of investors who have been very patient, to the point where, unfortunately, a good many of them now hold their shares in their will, rather than, or in their estate, rather than in their pocket. But in general, the property itself is very attractive, and as I said, does not require significant amounts of infrastructure. There's a heavy haul road built right to the property boundary already because it's used for logging. There's a short piece of power line to be built. And since the new natural gas situation in British Columbia, there is a high pressure natural gas line 10 kilometers away from the property. So there is no shortage of infrastructure available. And in fact, work could start tomorrow because there's already a camp close to the site where we can house workers. So it is very simple from that regard. In terms of the environmental concerns, the property has been logged once already commercially. In fact, it's been done so long ago it has been reforested, but that would just make the clearing simpler. With respect to water management and so on, all of the requirements for acid rock drainage and so on have been considered already. They're built into the plans. Any water management issues can be readily addressed. This particular part of Morrison Lake was, at the turn of the last century, a major salmon hatchery. So we could reconstruct a portion of the spawning channel that was used then, and we can populate the entire country with salmon if we want to. So it is certainly not any major environmental concern that can't be dealt with there very easily.
Excellent. We thank you for that. So I think that's a fully information about a very interesting, although at this moment, speculative investments. And we thank you for the presentation. Thank you. And to the viewers, we thank you for your patience, and we will be back in a very, very short while with the next presentation, iMetal. Thank you. So, welcome back. It's high time to introduce our last company, iMetal Resources, and its CEO, Saf Dillon. Hello, Saf, and welcome to Invest Live and our Swedish viewers. How are you?
Good, Carlo. Thanks for having me, and good afternoon, I guess, to all the viewers and listeners.
Yes, it's really afternoon, and to you it's early morning, I take it. Well, Saf, the floor is yours. Please walk us through your presentation.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Carlo. And you're correct. As you mentioned, the company name is iMetal Resources. We're a junior Canadian-focused company. We are listed on 3 exchanges, as shown on the screen: TSX Venture, IMR, the US OTC QB that we just graduated to, and we also trade on the Frankfurt. As our mission statement states, we're actually on a mission of discovery. And I'm not going to go through every page. I don't want to bore the viewers, but I think I'm going to show you how we kind of set ourselves apart a little bit. For a small little $3 million market cap company, I think we got a lot going on. And of course, we're a public company. There's some forward-looking statements, disclosure. First question, I guess, usually is why invest in us or why invest in iMetal Resources? Well, as I said, it's a Canadian-focused company. All of our projects are in Ontario and Quebec. 3 gold-focused projects are based in Ontario, and then the sole graphite property is just across the border in Quebec. Ontario and Quebec, for your viewers, if they weren't aware, are usually in the top 5, if not the top 3 of the most safest mining jurisdictions to work in the world, and also having the basic mining infrastructure in place, as well as being one of the most prolific regions anywhere in the world. All of our properties are focused in a region called the Abitibi Greenstone Belt. It's also referred to as the Greenstone Gold Belt because of the prolific number of ounces that have been produced from this little region since the first discovery of any resources in the early 1900s. So we're well over 200 million ounces of gold. This coming from 21 distinct mines. All these projects have had over 3 million ounces of production and or reserves. All of the major mid-tier and major producers, Canadian producers, are all based in this region. Some of the international companies are as well. And like they say, where's the best place to look for a discovery? Well, probably right next to where there's already been many discoveries already made. Again, we've got a good portfolio of assets. I'll kind of go through them maybe 1 or 2 pages at a time. But we've got anywhere from early stage at our Ghost Mountain, which probably is the least developed of our assets. But again, it's in a key location. Then we've got the Kerrs Gold that has 400,000 ounces of gold roughly. Then we've got our graphite property that we're currently drilling. And then Gauganda, which is our flagship property. Our team also is comprised of myself, of course, Tim Henneberry, who's been involved as a successful geologist well over 43 years. He's worked everywhere, all over the world, South America, African countries, and he's also worked in parts of Mexico and other parts of North America. Our newest addition was Scott Zelligan. We brought him on board last year. He's a very successful young geologist. When I say young, yeah, he's still in his early 30s. He's based out of Ontario, about an hour north of Toronto, about a 4 or 5 hour drive from all of our projects. Scott has been involved in a couple of successful Canadian discoveries within the last 2 to 3 years. One of them being in the Ring of Fire in northern Ontario, and one in the Maritimes. So he's very, very hands-on, and he's very, I think, suited for what we're working on and the projects that we have. I think I kind of like to show this slide. The Greenstone Belts, there's more than one in Ontario, but this being the Abitibi Greenstone Belt, these rocks, or the Archean rocks, they're very important because to be around these types of rocks, this is where some of the largest endowments of gold have been found. As I mentioned earlier, there's well over 200 million ounces, of gold, 400 million ounces of silver, 15 billion tons of copper, and 35 billion tons of zinc. again, over multiple different mines. Again, companies like Newmont, Osisko, IM Gold, Agnico Eagle are all here. And the diagram or the picture on the right kind of gives you a bit of a snapshot of the province of Ontario. It's kind of might be hard for some people to see, but there's a bit of a line that goes towards the right of the screen. And you can see it's kind of gray. That's where Quebec, the boundary is. Our projects are the ones in the black labels with the white lettering. Kerr's Gold would be the most north. Ghost Mountain, again, the least developed, and Galganda West. But again, you can notice all of our projects are within, driving distance, stone's throw, as they say, between major camps. Excuse me. Sorry, I think I've been at these mining conferences here in Vancouver, and I think I caught a bug from somebody. This picture, I won't go into too much detail. It's kind of hard to see, but again, this is a high-level snapshot of the whole Abitibi Greenstone Belt. And you can see this shows all of Ontario and Quebec. Here's our graphite property, which is just across the border in Quebec. And then, of course, Kerr's Gold, Ghost Mountain, and then our flagship down here. Again, you can see all our properties are within this whole cluster of some of the biggest gold-producing mines in the world. This is our flagship property. I think I really kind of, I love using that phrase. Like they say, if a picture's worth 1,000 words, this is definitely one of those pictures. We're smack in the middle, the red. You can see the legend on the right. iMetal is right here. We own 150 square kilometers. We own this 100%. Infrastructure is in place. Here's a major provincial mining road that goes right through our property. And then you can see the logging companies have constructed, and they currently maintain these beautiful logging access roads that go deep into our property. What I wanted to point out here, excuse me, on our slides, if you take a look at some of our neighbors, within the last 2 years, there's been some active drilling going on by our neighbors as well as us. Some of our neighbors are hitting some of the highest grades of silver anywhere in the world. You're looking at 7,000 ounces there. There's another 7,300, 200, almost 70 grams of gold. And then you get closer to us and you basically are just under 5 grams. All the companies around us, I think, have a bit of a larger market cap. But what's really key here is that we share a border with this company, Aris Mining. They basically are about a $500 million market cap. They actually have a good portion of that market cap derived from their Colombian production, high-grade gold. But they also acquired this Juby deposit. It was actually multiple deposits of gold. It's roughly about 2.5 million ounces. They acquired this about 3 years ago. And it's kind of hard to make out here, but our company has been focused. We drilled one hole down here a couple of years ago. We focused right now currently in zone 1. That deposit stops roughly less than, I was going to say approximately 300 meters from our property. So we're pretty excited about that. I think previous management, previous work that has been done on our property, it was all under the thesis that this gold structure, these are not gold structures on our property, those are VTEM targets. But you can see that the potential theory has been that our property possibly contains the continuation of this system. We potentially have the origination of this system, or we have something clearly independent, but we definitely know we have something. And why do we assume that? I'll be showing you that in the next few slides. But on their property, it looks like there's more than one. There's multiple potential structures, and they look like a continuation would continue through on our property. Again, this one right here is another junior company, but they have actually got a partnership or a JV with Agnico Eagle, one of the largest gold producing companies in the world. I think they currently probably have a $35 billion market cap. They're actively drilling there right now. So we know that we have something here. And on that note, I'm just going to give you a quick little update here on our drilling. We've completed 4,600 meters in the last 1,800 months. We've identified multiple new zones. We have a major trench that looks like it's over 7 kilometers in length, open at both ends, at depth and at width. We drilled about a dozen holes in this region, and every hole hit gold mineralization. But actually, June 3rd, we actually announced that we hit a discovery hole. And it's funny because there's some kind of disconnect between the price of gold and juniors. Our stock actually went down 3 cents, but our technical team is really excited because if you look at this actually is our property right here. This is just a small little square box that we've been focused on our work. There's our neighbor's deposit. Potentially looks, as I said, it looks like it potentially could come onto our property. Here's the South Gold Corridor trend. Correlates to where all our successful grab samples and drilling has occurred to date. So we're really excited. Our team thinks that with this successful discovery hole we announced on June 3rd, which is 50 meters of basically a gram of gold in the ground, our team is excited. They think that if we can hit identical holes, if not greater, at least these type of holes, fairly quickly, the company could be sitting on 3, 4, maybe 500,000 ounces of gold. Now, 500,000 ounces of gold is not going to be a company changer, but when you put it into relation to where there's major systems around us, then you're potentially talking about something on a much bigger scale. So that's why we're excited. We're excited, I think, to continue drilling, and that's really going to be the plans for the company going forward. Trying to hopefully not talk too fast, but want to get onto the other projects real quickly. We made this acquisition, the Kerrs Gold acquisition, in the first quarter of 2022, just at the same time that we completed a $3 million financing. This is roughly just under 400,000 ounces of gold, 36 to be exact, basically at about just under 2 grams. Cutoff is about half a gram. If you take the cutoff to even a gram, you're still left with about 320,000 ounces of gold. When we made this acquisition, excuse me, it actually took our team a number of months to get all the data. And when we did actually finally get the data, it was not in a data room. It was all in paper form. So it took us a few months to put everything together. Now the team has good visualization. They have good modeling on the project. And the team is excited. They think that fairly quickly, with some holes, some successful holes, that we could actually increase the size of this resource anywhere from at least doubling it and maybe even a little much more. But that's based on basically all the data they've actually been able to put together over the last couple of months. This is just a 3D seismic or leapfrog. Sorry, I'm not very technical, but this is our, our last project, Ghost Mountain, last gold focus project. And this is the one that's actually probably been the least developed. But again, here we are. We share a board with a major, Agnico Eagle. They actually surround us on all 3 sides. Plans are at some point later this year, hopefully, to put a couple of drill holes in this property. We're less than 5 kilometers from the Agnico Eagle Newmont mine. So as you can see, there's other major gold companies all around us. So we can't wait to get working on this property as well. Now, shifting from gold, we are a gold-focused company, but we also had this project, Carhill. The company's owned it for about 7-8 years. We weren't planning on doing anything with it, but in the winter of December 2022, one of our neighbors actually announced that they hit a major discovery hole. That's us in the red. Our neighbors, I believe at the time, even now, I think they're still trading at about a $200+ million market cap. One of our neighbors drilled a successful discovery hole. I believe their news went out December 3rd of 2022. That spurred interest in our property. We ended up raising $602,000 flow through from a Quebec flow through focused fund. We ended up drilling about 1,000 meters, and we ended up extending on the successful drilling that the previous management did. They had actually encountered one zone. We've now actually encountered 2 additional zones. They had hit grades as high as about 7.5%. Now we've encountered all the way up to just under 13%. So we're not sure what we're going to do with this project. We've had some expressions of interest of possibly working with us on this, or maybe even an outright sale. But, I think we're understand that we're going to maximize value for our shareholders, as this is an attractive project for companies who are focused on the EV, rush, if you want to say. Real quickly, I kind of went over the drilling at Galgenda West. Plans are hopefully here at some point, first quarter of 2024. We'll be looking to do a possible financing for this Galgenda drilling. Again, Ghost Mountain, probably in the summer or second half. We'll start. Currently, the company is drilling. I think we probably could be having an updated news release within the next 2 weeks, just to let investors know how many holes have been completed and then what the plans are going to be following successful completion of this program. Kerr's Gold Deposit, again, plans are going to be looking to do a roughly 2,500 to 3,000 meter drill program. Management team, I've talked about that real quickly. Scott Davis is an independent director. He's his partner, successful accounting, CFO, public servicing public companies in the junior Canadian space. And then Rob Scott is the inaugural member who joined our advisory board. He came on just basically in November of 2023. You might know Scott, Rob Scott's name. He was part of the Great Bear team. He was CFO for a number of years when I guess they went from roughly our market cap, $2-3 million market cap. And they finally got bought out by Kinross just early last year for just under $2 billion. That's Tim Henneberry holding some of the core at our projects. Just real quickly, we've got only about 56 million shares issued and outstanding. We had 21 million warrants. We've actually had another 6 million warrants over the last few months that have been exercised earlier this year. And we have probably about 16 million warrants that if they aren't exercised at 20 cents, they'll be falling off. The company, again, still has a fairly tight float. Management owns just under 10%. And the company used to be a fairly good trader. We had been trading for about a $10-12 million market cap when we were drilling. We had spent money on marketing, had some great liquidity, brought in some really good, I think, long-term investors. And what happened was when we announced that discovery hole, the stock was off 3 cents. We thought, you know what, there's no point in spending money on marketing right now. And this actually is one of our first official marketing events. And so we're excited to be talking with and meeting with European investors. And lastly, I just wanted to finish off again with why invest in iMetal. Marketing 101, location, location, location. All of our projects either share a border with a major or are within kilometers of a major mine or a deposit. Successful management team, and again, a great portfolio of high quality assets. And I hope I didn't go over the time.
Excellent. Thank you, Seth. I have a couple of questions here, and I would just start by one thing, and then as you mentioned, location, and the best way to find any sort of metal would be in the shadow of the head frame. But
yes,
if we look at your fields here, and particularly Ontario greenstone belts, and forgive me my ignorance here, but it seems like a vast area where you have your geographical claims here. Is there any synergies here between your fields? Can you like co up with rigs and people and stuff like that, or do you have to move people and in that way?
Well, currently, I don't know if actually maybe I'll go back. We've it's actually based in Quebec, and Quebec, Ontario have a few, I think, different. The mining ministries work a little bit different. They prefer to have their own local people. So yes, we do have a local team both in Quebec and in Ontario. Our main driller, he was actually out here in Vancouver for the conferences. Excuse me. He's based in Kirkland Lake Gold, and I think what happens is when you have really good people, it's just word of mouth, and our local drillers have worked for some of our neighbors as well. And I like to think that for a lot of us guys in the junior space, that, you know what, we're all kind of pulling for each other, because my neighbor's success is going to be our success, and our success is going to be our neighbor's success. Like they say, rising tides lift all boats. And, at some point, yeah, maybe there could be some synergies in putting some of these properties together. But we like to add some value for our shareholders. And it's kind of tougher to have discussions with somebody when you don't quite know what you have. When you're well on your way to defining a resource, I think that's probably a good time to start looking at that kind of stuff. But until then, I think our focus is really, unless, of course, somebody comes up with, a great solution that is a win-win for everybody. Till that day, we're focused on building value for our shareholders by the drill bit.
Yeah, and if we look at the drill and looking at the results and so on, will you take each field as a piecemeal, or do you have the capacity to explore all the fields at the same time?
We actually did have 2 drill rigs going on 2 different properties at the same time. But again, you know what? For junior companies, your currency is your share price. And, and the $12 million market cap, trading between 22 and 30 cents. Sure, you could do another financing, continue going. But, we've been really hesitant to do a large financing at these depressed prices. I mean, like I said, when we started, gold is trading at 1,700. We've now got a discovery hole. We've got 400,000. Like when I took over this company 3 years ago, we really had nothing but these projects. We didn't have any ounces in the ground. We didn't have a discovery hole. Now we have 400,000 ounces of gold in the ground. We've got a discovery hole. Gold is north of 2,000, so it's up $400 or $500 an ounce roughly since we started. And the stock is now sitting at a $3 million market cap. It's just one of those things. I think that, yes, we did pull back on marketing, but, it's flying under the radar. And this is why, we engage with the Scandinavian Alliance, and we're doing this marketing push now.
But it's an interesting point you make here is really the gold price. Because it's a large discrepancy here with how the juniors have performed and how the underlying metal price have performed. And so one could argue that it has nothing to do with the underlying value and everything to do with, let's say, market risk appetite and interest rates. And you could argue that something's got to give, and it's not entirely certain that gold price will come down. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's anybody's guess. And, I've grown up in Vancouver my whole life. My parents are of Indian descent. And I remember when I got my first job, like a big part of the world likes to buy gold and hold it. And I remember when gold was $200-300 an ounce, my parents said, go take your paycheck every 2 weeks, go buy an ounce of gold. And so it kind of makes you think that, you know what, when you have growing populations from Asian countries or the emerging markets that really love gold, like where's the disconnect, like you said, between these junior companies and the price of all these commodities, actually, really?
Yeah,
well, at some point, I think it's got to give. It's got to turn.
Yeah. Well, then that should be very interesting to see, because then it's quite narrowing the door when everybody wants the same thing. But if we look at the gold price performance or underlying market share, how important is that really for you now, if when it comes to actually doing the drilling and the assessments, because you're not producing, as it were?
No. Yeah, no, it's not. But the reason why I think it is a factor for companies like ours, you're hoping that the strengthening commodity prices are going to give a correlated correlation to the strengthening of our market caps or our share. And so that's why I think you got to find a good balance of between spending the marketing, telling your story, and spending the money on drilling. But if you're going to spend money on drilling and nobody cares, you got to kind of wait it out for a while. It's kind of tough. So like I said, it's a fine balancing act.
Yeah, and also you refer to spending the money. Have inflation been a problem? Do you regard it as a problem?
Well, you got your fuel prices, I guess, or fuel surcharges that usually come up with the drilling companies. But for the most part, I think our drillers are actually very, very good, very efficient. And, the rates haven't changed as drastically, I think, as the rest of consumer spending has gone up. So I think we've been fortunate there. Maybe it's a Canadian thing, but these drillers are actually really good at what they do, and they're really efficient. I've been getting good reports from our graphite drilling, and they're actually surprised at how smooth it's been running. So you always have the contingency for overruns or fuel surcharges or delays, but it's always nice when you've got good people or good crews that are working with you, right?
Yeah, and one could argue that rising inflation is definitely not pushing down the price for gold or copper. Could I just ask you one thing? If you look at the CVs of the management and your own background here, developing startups to producers, what could we expect from iMetal under your own leadership here? Will you go all the way to become a producer? Would you look for a partner, or would you just sell the area, as you mentioned, with one of the fields that's been more or less on ice, and when the neighbors find something, you focus on that?
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I forgot to go into that part of my history. My background, I originally came from retail banking, dealing with high net worth investors. And then my first foray into the public markets actually happened July 15th, 2004. I was fortunate to work with a good group of guys, one of them here based in Vancouver, and one of them was from the States. They had just listed a public company and had about a $2 million market cap. I started working with them, and basically we ended up over about a decade. It took about a decade. We constructed 3 geothermal power plants. We ended up raising close to $100 million by equity. We raised about $90 million long-term debt through the U.S. Department of Energy. Started producing $100 million in revenues. So I've been there, done that. I know what it takes, and it's a long road. I think what I'd like to say here on the mining side of things is we're not looking to make 10, 20, or 30% bump in the share price and sell the stock. We're trading up to 40 cents, and anybody on our team is sold a share. Nobody's exercised the warrant. But having said that, I don't think that this management team will produce or put a mine into production. I think well before that happens, we're either going to get taken out or JV'd or partnered up with somebody. But I think it's a completely different skill set. But we want to keep proving our assets, prove that our assets are actually world class, and we want to be able to get to that point of making that decision. Hey, do we want to sell this to somebody now, or merge with them? Or that's what we'd like to do. We're not here to just do a promote and move on to the next project next year.
But one could argue, as having skin in the game and with your background, that you would be able to get the right price before you accept an offer. Would that be fair?
Oh yeah. I think that just over the last few months, I think even I've had a couple of analysts that I've talked to. They're like, "Wow, you guys are trading at 4 times the ounces that you have in the ground, and your peers were trading." I think people do understand that when some companies are extremely undervalued, but it's going to take some more time to get the story out there. And I'm hoping that 2024 is the year that we're going to start getting our name out there in a bigger way, starting with the Swedish market.
Excellent. Yeah, 2024 would be quite interesting, looking at, let's say, the laggards where the underlying assets have moved on. What would be the next news flow from you? What do you want the market to look at?
I think you can expect some news from our graphite property, and I think potentially, we have been actually looking at some other distressed assets. So I think that you never know, something that might help us take it from 2 years ago we had 0 ounces. Now we've got 400,000 ounces roughly in the ground. We've got a discovery hole, hoping to take that to 400,000 ounces. I think I think it's quite possible, because even though at some point we're going to be needing to do a financing, I think we've had a pretty capable team or technical team. We do have some consultants that actually are at a senior higher level. I've been able to forge these relationships that are working with us, and so we are actually looking at some other assets that could supplement the company. Kauganda is our flagship for now, but if something comes along that can really add the asset and make sense economically, and we could do a finance around it, I think that's very possible in this first quarter.
Interesting. So 2024 will also be an interesting year for anyone watching out for the news regarding iMetals. And if one have any further questions, we will go to your webpage, I take it?
Sure.
Come again? I think we lost you there.
Me?
Yes.
The webpage?
No. The question was, if there are any further questions, then we will direct them to your webpage, and then it's sort of cut off here. So.
Yeah, you know what? Sorry. Right here, they can email me directly, Saf at iMetal Resources. Call the number.
Okay.
Anytime.
Excellent.
I'm a firm believer in, answering as many questions, calls, getting back to people in a reasonable amount of time. So people can feel free to call me or Chris anytime.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that. And we have all the contact details. And when you watch this presentation, you have it at the end of Saf's presentation. Yeah, exactly. So with that, I'll thank you, Saf, for your time. Very interesting, invigorating, and we hope to see you soon. And for the viewers, thank you very much. And we'll get back to you with the new investment live as and when. Take care.